All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Replace Your Income with Kevin and
Steve.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Good. For those of you that are watching, which all of you should be watching, because we don't just do the podcast on audio any longer. We do it on video, and so you can watch it on YouTube. And if you're anything like all of the other humans in my home, you listener out there, you're watching everything on YouTube. At least that's how my kids are. They don't even know real TV exists.
Well,
it's just
Kev, I really appreciate the work you put into getting ready for this podcast.
Yes.
In not shaving today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that for all
yeah,
your...
this is so that it makes me feel more distinguished, because you know how immature I am. And so when I grow out my beard, I have like this gray right here, and then it makes me feel like I'm a real adult.
I totally thought that you like dyed your beard like the other day. I was like, did you do that on purpose? Like, how did you do that?
It is so weird to me, like, to look in the mirror and go, how do I have gray hair on my face? Because I still feel
but
mentally,
it's like perfect stripes.
It is. It's like perfectly striped. But I still feel mentally like I'm the same age as my 14-year-old daughter. That's how I feel mentally. So then, but I don't look it, and it's strange.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but just kidding.
Oh man, hey, you just got back from Colorado. How was that?
Fantastic trip. Had the opportunity to meet with several of our clients, with many of the agents that we work with, and also had a chance to spend some time with some corporate EXP folks, EXP Realty, and it was a great day. I was up at 3 a.m., caught my flight at 5:45, spent all day there, caught the flight home at 10:55, back in bed by 2 a.m. So it was like a 23-hour day. It was
long
awesome.
Day. Yeah, that's a long day. Well, thanks for coming and being here. And for those of you that are watching, you've maybe, depending on how Justin cut this video, you've maybe already seen that we have a beautiful, wonderful guest with us. One of our amazing friends and clients, Andrea Barnes, is here. Andrea, how are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, this is awesome. So I got to tell you, so we did an event. Gosh, we were in office last month, and Andrea, you just happened to be at the office.
Well,
right?
I knew my realtor was
here,
and I wanted to come and meet her in person because I've been working with her for 5 years, but I'd never actually met her.
And it was so cool. Andrea came in, and she stood in front of like a room of some folks that we had here, and she was just talking about her story, and she has such an amazing story, and we've been working together since 2012, and so we asked if you'd come on the podcast to be able to share your story and talk a little bit about it. And Steve and I want to do more of this because there's so many people that we've worked with over the years who we love very much, who've done a bunch of real estate, and just people that have become friends that have amazing stories. And I'm so thankful that you're willing to come today and to share that. And so we are really excited to have you here and to be able to kind of dive into this. So just thank you for coming and being able to hang out. We know it's difficult to be in the same room with Steve for any extended period of time. So thank you for making the sacrifice.
Typical that is staying away.
Yeah, that's right. But no, this is super cool. So I kind of want to go back, Andrea, and I want to maybe tell us a little bit of the story of how you got introduced to Done For You Real Estate, and then tell us a little bit of kind of what the progression has been with your real estate portfolio over the years.
Well, first off, basically, Done For You Real Estate has just profoundly changed my husband and my life and our trajectory, quite seriously. So that's the whole story. But to go back into end scene. But just to go back to the start, I have always been interested in real estate. It's been something that I've tracked and been curious about, but I didn't really know anything about how to get into it. And I did have a nephew who had been your client, and he, I think, was on his third house. And I think that actually how it got started was he and his wife, my niece Bethany, were over at our house, and they said, we're thinking about doing our third house, and we would be probably looking for a money partner. And I looked at Kevin, and I said, well, we could be a money partner.
Not this Kevin, by
no,
the way.
my husband Kevin. My husband Kevin.
Just if there was any confusion for the watchers or listeners,
Yeah. And so he said, Ryan said, there's a meeting. You could come and listen to what's going on. And so I went to, at the time, you guys were doing home meetings. Actually, you were the presenter.
Nice.
And anyway, I decided to go get a game plan afterwards. And so I happened to have left a job, and I had my retirement money in a separate account. And so it wasn't tied up with a company. And I just remember saying to my husband, Kevin, when we went into the meeting, I just want to lay out all of our finances, and so that so that we can really see what a game plan could do for
Sure.
us, And anyway, by the end of the game plan, I was super into the idea of doing this. And my husband, who is an engineer and just worked technical stuff all day long, he just said, I will support you in doing this, but I don't personally want to do it. And I said, that's okay. I'm really interested in this. I'll work on it. And so we both learned enough together so that we could make decisions together. But it's been kind of a project that I've been working on the most. So I actually started working with you guys, and this is back in 2012. It was 2011 actually when I met you, and the stock market had not been going very well. And my IRA had just lost almost $100,000. So
Wow.
a third of what the value was.
Oh my goodness.
And so I wasn't very enamored with the stock market at the time, and but I also just happened to be able to have some funds that were available. And so instead of being a money partner on one house, we went in hook, line, and sinker. And you just had a really good coach who made me feel comfortable doing this. But we ended up refinancing our house, pulling some money out. And then I did a conversion into a self-directed IRA. And with those funds, not commingled, but separately, we were able to buy 6 houses.
That's awesome.
So we started with 6 houses.
This is so amazing.
And I remember when we were telling people we were going to do it, first off, everyone told us we were nuts. And second, if they thought getting into real estate was a good idea, they just said, well, you're doing it all wrong. So
sure.
I would just say for people who are contemplating this, don't ask for advice from other people.
Can I tell you, we have a name for those people, Andrea, that we call the Teeny Tiny Pockets Brigade. And the reason that we call them that is, look, we know there's people in our lives that love us and they want what's best for us, but sometimes we think, shouldn't I take advice from this person who's never done the thing that I'm about to do? I don't know why we think that, right? But we do. And so, yes, we all have the Teeny Tiny Pockets Brigade in our life in some way, shape, or form.
Well, so we were both working full-time jobs, and this was scary. This was brand new. Back in the day, you had real estate intensive, so we both attended, and we learned as much as we could about being real estate investors and what we needed to do to set money aside. You called it a sleep well at night account.
Yeah.
But you guys made it possible for full-time busy people raising kids to do this. You knew what markets you wanted us to be in. You had the real estate agents. You had property managers. You helped us do all of the financing so that we could figure out all of those pieces that on my own, never in a million years when my husband and I have been able to do that. And just like that, I mean, I don't know if it's because we were going to buy 6 houses or whatever, but you guys put us through, and I think we started with you in November, and by April 15th, that is when we had the 6 houses. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And where did you buy the first 6?
So 4 in Arizona and 2 in Las Vegas.
Nice.
And so we were very fortunate for the timing when we got in because the houses were so discounted because of the real estate crash. And so I remember my niece and nephew telling us that the idea is that these houses then generate not only rent, but then potentially equity, and then those houses can start to buy other houses. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, and we're doing it, and it's working. And I'm just going, okay, well, I had no idea. But sure enough, within 3 years, our houses started to multiply. So we sold one house, refinanced another house, bought 2 houses in Florida. And then over that 10-year period of time, maybe 11, we got up to a total of 18 houses. And it was all from the houses buying other houses.
I love that.
And so
just that kind of organic growth of the portfolio.
Yeah. So about a little less than 2 years ago, we sold the last of our original houses. Mm-hmm. And so even in this different market that we're in, we still bought 6 houses in 22 and all in 22. And so it just, when that happens in your life, and when those houses are compounding and helping you, it just, how can that not help but profoundly change your life? And Go ahead.
So Andrea, let me ask you a question. So was it all ponies and roses, or did you have some pain involved along the way, or like tell us a little bit about that side?
Okay, well, so one of the things that we learned in the real estate intensive is that these houses belong to you. They're your responsibility. You have the relationships with the mortgage company, with the with the insurance company, with the property managers. And so you have to like grow up and really figure out what that means. And so probably the biggest thing that happened is that, when you put your money in a 401k or into a mutual fund, you just send it away, and it's somebody else's job to manage it. You don't really have a great relationship with it. But real estate has really taught me a lot about just giving me a financial education. And so, there's been problems all along the ways. I mean, we've had perfect tenants who have just kept our houses in pristine condition. We have had tenants who started out having great results in our house, and then like something happened in their lives personally, and all of a sudden they left the house in not great condition, and it cost quite a lot to turn it over. Last year in Florida, there was a really big hurricane, as people might remember, and so we actually had to replace 4 roofs, 2 of them with insurance, 2 of them just on our own. But the thing is that if you follow the principles that the coaches here help you understand, and you are putting money aside for capital expenditures and replacement costs, and you are making sure that you have the proper insurance coverage and other things like that, it does work out. I mean, it may make it so that, in 1 year you don't have very good cash flow because you have greater expenses than expected. Sure. But quite frankly, those early houses turned into unicorns, and they have helped propel all the other houses into just really solid footing. So it actually has been, sometimes it's really nerve-wracking. It's hard to get insurance in Florida because of the hurricanes that have happened recently. And so you have to just really stay on top of it. So I found out it really turns into a business. And so, we now have a real estate investing business.
So let me ask a follow-up question to that.
Okay.
So of course we all know that at DFY Real Estate, like that's one of the things we teach, right? Is that this is a physical asset. There's going to be some pain involved, that kind of a thing. But despite all of the pain, all of the different things that come up along the way, what would you say on average? How much time per month did you spend, having to deal with and work on these properties that you've owned?
Oh, early years, like 4 hours a month at the most on the outside. The biggest part was just tracking the numbers that you needed to do
in the accounting,
to prepare
sure.
your taxes. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
When you are transacting real estate, it takes a lot longer. So when I sold 3 houses and bought 6, that took quite a bit of work. Yeah. Because you have to prepare so much information for the lenders. But mostly it takes very little time. It's mostly the accounting. The accounting is what takes most of the time, because this is more active than maybe doing other passive investments, because you own the physical assets, and so you're responsible for them. But you have such a good team around you, from the property managers to the realtors to the agents who are, or the people who are helping you get the financing, that it really is a small amount of time.
So maybe a few hours a month, like
few hours a month,
average it out.
Few hours a month.
And tell us a little bit about the experience that you had with your coaches over the years doing your annual game plan reviews. What did that mean to you? What did that do for you?
Mostly what it did was give me a vision about what was possible. And then also, sometimes I was hard to chase down because I'm busy. Like, why are you asking me all these questions? I'm not really sure I'm ready to talk to you. But you guys have such a handle on all of the properties that every one of your clients owns. You know when there's equity. You know when there's like lazy equity. When's a good time to refinance? What new markets are open and available? What houses might you be able to afford if you made these 3 moves? And that's really what the game plan does, is really help you take a look at what's happening inside all of your real estate.
So I've not had this conversation with you before, so that's why this is so interesting to me.
Okay.
Because it's one of the things that we work so hard at, right? Like, so we have this theory. We had this theory at the very beginning and throughout the years that if we would have these regular conversations with our clients, where when we did get together with you, because we know that you're super busy, that it would be a meaningful conversation about the performance of your property and what would be the next steps in you executing, your game plan and propelling yourself towards those 10 properties, and for you, in your case, beyond 10 properties. And part of the theory was, if there wasn't somebody in your life helping to push things forward and kind of hold you accountable to looking at your properties to make decisions, that maybe it wouldn't have happened. At least the way that in a very systematic and process oriented way. And so it's really exciting to hear from you that having your team, your DFY team behind you, helped you kind of accomplish that bigger vision.
Well, and to your point, we did a podcast episode, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago on the evolution of the game plan, right? And we talked about how game plans have sort of evolved, right? When we first started the company, it was literally like a napkin presentation, right? Like we're writing on a piece of paper. But the other point that we made, and that I think is so important for anybody listening to understand, is that a game plan is not static, right? My guess is that first game plan, it probably wasn't, we're going to refinance today and then eventually we're going to go own 18 homes. It was probably, well, we're going to start here and then it's going to move here and then we'll see how things are going and hopefully we can multiply it to X. But I think the point is a game plan evolves over time. Do you feel like that was the case for you? Is that maybe what's happened has been, I don't know, better than expected, worse than expected, but maybe been different than originally expected? What's been your experience as you kind of look at the evolution of what the game plan has been from where you started to kind of where you're at now today?
Well, we kind of had a financial number in mind. What would we want a month to be able to read? Like, we were actually 50 years old when we got started doing this. And I mean, just in our close to 50. And I just remember thinking, well, this is a potential, especially because we potentially might have used my retirement funds to start this. And so I think, in some ways, our game plan was how would you get to your dollar amount for your retirement.
In terms of monthly cash flow?
Monthly cash flow,
okay.
yeah. And I have found that the cash flow has just been all over the map. One year I make a lot of cash flow, and another year I make like very little, because it just depends on the expenses. But what the internal rate of return, or if you sell a property and you go back over the history of that property and look at it, it's been bonkers. And so in that regard, it has been much like beyond my wildest imagination.
And could you just define for me, like, what is the definition of bonkers?
Yeah,
I'm just.
I would. So
I love that term.
Yeah, I would say in the 10 years that we started, we 10x'd our money.
That's awesome.
In terms of the value, maybe a little bit more. And so like what it did for us is that not only do we have these properties that, I actually am getting a new game plan today, right after we get finished.
Awesome.
They're going to go through and give me.
Are you sitting down with Mike?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mike and Jerem. And
Nice.
But part of what I want to understand is, like, what does your new pro forma look like?
Yes.
What does that new game plan look like? Because these are all of the properties that we currently have we want to hold for a long time. And I just kind of want to understand how it fits in my game plan,
sure.
me personally.
I love that.
And so, like, part of what we're doing is, we had got up to such a level of houses, and several of them were inside my IRA. We just decided that wasn't like the greatest place for them, and so we've been readjusting what we're doing. But it's just opened up a whole new world of possibility. Immediately we got into a status that's called an accredited investor. You had to have a certain you have to have over $1 million of assets outside of your personal home, in order to be able to get in on other kind of investments. Well, like, that's what DFY Real Estate did for us.
Yeah.
Like, those houses got us to that position where we could also start to look at other things. And now it's just super interesting. Like the whole world is super interesting to me. And like there's a whole new world out there. So I spend a lot of time and energy finding out what else there is. And but always having this base of these homes that just increase in value, and refinancing them when the time is right is just an incredible option of taking capital out that is not a taxable event, but it allows you to do another thing. And it just allows these to keep blossoming and growing in terms of our family.
I love that. We always talk about that as kind of like the organic growth of the portfolio, right? Like it's great to buy, like I tell people all the time that if I could have one goal for you, it would be to get you from wherever you are to your first investment property. Right now, some people can go buy more like you guys did initially, but the reason for that is we know that with time and with getting into one property, that property over time creates the opportunity, as you've alluded to or explicitly stated 3 or 4 times, to go and buy additional real estate. And you'd mentioned the same thing had happened with Ryan and Bethany. By the way, for those of you listening and watching, if you're wondering who her niece and nephew are, we actually did a podcast interview with Ryan Lee, and Ryan's a good friend and a client and also an amazing business owner in his own right, and they're the ones that ultimately introduced you guys initially. So you guys, if you're watching or listening, you should go and listen to the podcast that I did with Ryan, where we just talked a little bit about his story, because it's awesome. But I love that has been sort of the journey for you guys, is starting and then kind of organically growing it. And I know that through that process, while there's been peaks and valleys, I know that at the end of the day, you've been able to your credit, what you said, create something that my guess is you probably wouldn't have known another way to create that same sort of situation. Real estate opened up the door of possibility for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably, so we used your coaches. Your coaches seriously just like laid it all out for us, and then just step by step. And then probably the thing that made it work is that I had a lot of grit and follow through.
Yeah, you're awesome.
So I'm an incredible project manager. So like I could just like knock this stuff out. And so that also is part of the magic sauce, is somebody has to be willing to do all the steps.
Sure.
Because you guys lay it out for them and you provide all of the tools and all of the resources and contacts and everything. But you got to be able to get in and knock it out and get that done too.
And one of the things that you talked about in terms of our team is, I know you've had really good experiences with some of your agents. The whole reason you came in when you talked in our conference room was because you wanted to meet Jody, right?
Right. So,
and we just had Jody on the podcast, and we were talking a little bit about that before. But maybe mention kind of what your experience has been with Jody.
So Jody Gandy is the real estate agent that you guys use in Indianapolis. So she and I have started working together in 2018, I think. And she has helped us to purchase altogether 8 houses, something like that. And she sold a couple of them for us as well. And when I listened to her on the podcast, I was blown away by the fact that she said she's helped you guys transact 700 houses, because every time I have ever worked with her, I only feel like I'm her client.
Yeah.
Like I'm like the only one she's working with. And whether, like we just sold a little house. It was not a big house. It was not expensive. And so the commission was not like that much, but the work that she did and the personal touch that she made, and like that, the hoops that she had to go through to make sure that this house sold, it meant a lot to me personally. But for me to think that that's what she does for all of your clients, it makes me think you guys got a really great person who's on your team.
Yeah, no, we really do. And that's why we wanted to have Jody on, because we know how amazing Jody is. And I'm so glad that you've had that experience. And Jody, if you're listening, you're amazing. It's awesome.
But it's not even just that market. I mean, every market I've been in, I've had great realtors. And when we were doing our houses in Arizona, that guy, amazing. And then Vivian in Orlando, who's been working with us, we love her too. So we haven't had a bad experience with any of the people. We've only had. You guys are good at picking them out. They've been great. We're
going to give Steve all that credit, because he's the one who is the ultimate vetter of teams, I think, and he's really, really good at it. One thing that I wanted to touch on as well that you mentioned before we started to record, because I don't know how often this takes place, but for me, when I think of, properties that we own or that I own, I always love the idea of imagine owning a property in a market, and it's a property that's vetted, just like it's purchase-worthy property. It's a Moneyball single, like we always talk about, and it's the kind of home that somebody wants to live in, right? We always talk about that all the time. When we're vetting properties, when we're looking at markets and even areas within markets, and when we're looking for that 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, we want to own real estate where people want to live. And I've always, I think it's kind of the ultimate accomplishment if you happen to have a tenant that loves where they live so much that they even go on to buy that home from you, and you had an experience with that, or you're in the process of a potential experience like that as well, correct?
Yeah. So we have a house that we want to transact. We feel like it's gotten to a really good point, price point wise, and so we're taking a look at that. And as I worked with you guys and then our property manager to make sure that everything was moving forward. I just got a call yesterday, and that the current tenant has qualified for a loan and is really interested in purchasing that house. And to me, it's a win-win.
Sure.
And so I'm excited about that for them. And then it's a really good thing for us as well. So we'll see how that transaction goes. Yeah, because it's not through.
So, thank you for sharing that. I think it's such a cool story. So, if somebody's listening and they're kind of thinking like, because we have folks that listen to the podcast that are clients, just like you. We have folks that listen to the podcast that are sort of nibbling around the edges and thinking about diving in. And you have such extensive experience now. I mean, you're a real estate professional now. I mean, you've done this, and you have such an incredible knowledge base just based on your experience. What would you say to somebody that's considering entering the market today? Like if they've not yet invested in real estate, like when you take into account, the time in which you've been transacting, what the experience has been like. You mentioned you guys bought properties in 2022. What would you say to somebody that's kind of thinking about getting into real estate right now, but maybe they're a little scared?
Well, it was scary. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there was nothing usual about what we ended up doing.
Sure.
I mean, for us to have thought, maybe what we'll do is provide $30,000 as being a money partner with somebody else to fully refinancing our house and converting an IRA. So that was a really big step.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And so there was a lot of fear. So the first thing I would just say is that real estate is an incredible investment, and you just have to work through your fear. You have to push through it. Like once you've made the logical decision, you just have to push through that fear, and then act. Like doing the first one's scariest, and it's not scary after doing the first one, but then really attend to business. Like this becomes a business. And so you do have to pay attention to all of the accounting. You do have to make sure that you have your insurance up to date, and that you have your umbrella insurance policy, and that you have a good relationship with your property manager, and that, when insurance rolls around and has to get renewed, that it's actually getting renewed. And then what do you care about? Do you, after you've had maybe one tenant that hasn't been nice to your house, you might want to spend the extra $100 that it takes to have your property manager do midterm reviews of the house, going in and doing an inspection. So you have to decide what is going to make you have the best results, and then to be able to make sure you're setting aside enough money to be able to take care of your property. So because it's a really big investment, and so I think that's the biggest thing, is that it's about taking charge and then actually implementing and taking care of things, and then sitting back and letting it happen, because it does. It sort of is magic after that.
Yeah, I love so much of what you said. That we've got our book coming out in the not too distant future, and there's a chapter that we put in the book, and we literally talk about the magic, and we talk about kind of this magic of real estate that takes place over time. There's also another chapter in the book that's literally titled "Do It Now," and it's the idea that if you want results, you have to act, right? So when we think of, I think Steve, you could give us some insight as well. But I think when we look at what we try to do from a real estate standpoint, I think as investors, as well as for our clients, we know that there's a passive aspect to it, right? Like we're not the ones, if you're listening, you're not the one that's traveling to markets across the country and trying to vet homes. But once you get introduced to a market and you get introduced to an agent and you get a property analysis that's in front of you, like it's incumbent on you to act. And then once you close on the property, it doesn't mean that you just sit back and you are completely passive. Yes, there's passive cash flow, but what I think is so great about what you said, Andrea, and what I think you're such a good example for anybody listening is that real estate becomes your business, and you must tend to your business, because if you just neglect and ignore your business, how is it possibly going to continue to grow and thrive? And I really like your emphasis on that, and I think that that's something that we would say to anybody listening, that needs to be a part of how you are looking at your perspective when it comes to real estate investing. Is use Andrea as an example, tend to your business.
Well, and I think people maybe are a little bit short-sighted, because right now prices are high and interest rates are high, right? But real estate doesn't just pay you one way, right? And so you have to look at all the ways that real estate benefits you financially. And so, certainly there's cash flow from the rents. There's mortgage pay down because the tenant is paying for your mortgage. There are tax advantages. There are equity grows. And then finally, it's an inflation hedge. I mean, there's 5 ways that real estate is really protecting you in your financial future. And so all of them are working in different ways across different markets and different conditions. And so the most important thing I think is to get in the game and then to get started doing that.
Speaking of get in the game, okay, you guys ready for this? My daughter and son at the junior high just found out what the play is going to be for fall. You know what it is? It's going to be High School Musical, and there's a song in High School Musical that says, get your head in the game. And so as you said that, I visualized boys dancing with basketballs. Is that weird? That's just what happened. That's just
coming for you. It is not weird, Kev. It is par for the course. I love it. Love it.
Good.
Yes.
Awesome.
So anyone who's a big fan of that musical, it was filmed in my daughter's high school.
It was filmed at East. You want to know something cool? Side note. So if you've ever watched High School Musical out there's a character. He's got this really curly hair. He's one of the main character's best friends. He was played by an actor named Corbin Bleu. And so the theater teacher at Canyon View Junior High has a son who's on Broadway in a show with Corbin Bleu. And so she had Corbin Bleu record a video for all of the students saying, hey guys, I heard you're doing High School Musical. Miss Treegagel told me this is going to be awesome. It's such a great show. I was like, how cool is that? It's pretty dang cool. Not nearly as cool as real estate though.
No,
Andrea. No, it's not. Not nearly as cool. Well, okay, so as we kind of wrap the episode, I feel like you've shared so many nuggets and so many really good things that I think are worth sort of going back and listening to and digesting. But I just want to kind of give you the last word. What would you want to share with anybody listening, whether that's an endorsement of real estate or a cautionary tale, or what would be the best advice? And I know you've already given a lot of good advice, but as kind of a last word, what would you want to share with somebody listening right now in terms of what your experience has been with real estate?
Oh, well, the first thing that I would share is I could never in a million years have done it without you guys. I mean, I've been able to branch out since a little bit because I've gotten the education and the experience with working with you guys. But I mean, you made it possible for us to do this. So for somebody who'd never been in real estate, who had no idea what was happening. I mean, I knew that the markets were going crazy and that, people had unfortunately lost their houses and that, all of that kind of stuff back in the day, back in 2012 when we were first getting started. But I didn't know anything else. And literally nothing else. And by the skill and the care and the research that you guys do and the services the wraparound services, I should say, that you guys do, the done for you services. Yeah. It made it possible for 2 busy people who were both working full-time jobs and raising kids to jump in and get started, and to do it in a way that we weren't at risk, that it was, we were shoring up our bets by having extra savings and putting, some of the rent away to make sure that we had the cash reserves that we needed and that we had the proper insurance protection, et cetera. And then just those checkups with us, like all of that stuff is what made it possible for us. And honestly, it's been aggravating and extraordinary at the same time. It's like there's a reality check. There is a lot of reality that goes on because you are dealing with people, and people have messy lives or wonderful lives, and you get to be in the middle of it, or at least your house does. And so it's not all roses, but it is worthwhile. And when the stock market dropped and I lost a third of my retirement account value, I realized that I knew nothing about what made the stock market tick. And there was nothing I could even do to choose how the stock market was going to behave. And so I did not understand that investment. But what I did understand and could wrap my head around was that there were homes that were available and people who needed to live in them, and neighborhoods that needed to be restored by having people caring for properties and, taking care of those homes. And I thought that is a value that I understand. And that is something that I feel like I can personally help solve and be part of a solution that makes a community better. And that was an investment that I could wrap my head around.
I love that. And I just again want to say thank you. Steve and I are so thankful you came on the podcast. And I'm sure you've thought about this, Andrea, but as I'm sitting and listening to you, just knowing how extraordinary you are, but what you just described, if you look at all of the real estate that you've done in your life, when you consider, and this is something Steve and I have talked about on the podcast before, when you consider the impact, now you and your husband, you guys have benefited, there's been work involved, but you guys have benefited from a real estate standpoint. But one of the things that I don't think we think often enough is you have had a tremendous impact on so many people's lives because of the choices you've made. Think of the agents that have helped you and got to know you and that have made money. The property managers who've had jobs because they got to manage your property. The tenants who had experiences where they were able to, maybe grow as a family or have joyful experiences because of the home that you provided for them to live in. The mortgage professionals that you worked with that made some money through the process, but that were also blessed and fortunate to be able to interact with you and learn from you. Your coach or your coaches that you've worked with and the experience that they've had in learning from you and the impact that you've had on them, being able to continue to feed their family as well. I don't think we consider nearly enough the impact, in the book, and we've done a podcast on it. We call it the power of one. And it's the idea that the power that we have as investors, even with just one transaction, is a true financial ripple effect that I don't think we fully understand. A lot of times we think of it sort of selfishly, like, what is this going to do for me? This property is going to benefit me. It's going to grow my portfolio. But what you just described, which I think is so honorable, which is this was something you could wrap your mind around and realize not only could it benefit you and your family and allow you to do so even though you're busy, even though you were raising a family, but it also was going to be able to reach out and have an impact and a ripple effect beyond maybe the ripple effect that we realize we have, on a day-to-day basis. You have been able to provide tremendous experiences for maybe hundreds of people over the years, and then you've still, at the end of the day, financially likely benefited significantly more than all of them put together, but you still provided something of tremendous worth for all of these people throughout the process. And so I don't know if you have thought through that, but I honor you for that, because it really is amazing. And I don't think that we give ourselves enough credit when we think of real, true, principle-based capitalism, and that when we are good actors acting in good faith, and we can work with other good actors acting in good faith, we can have a tremendous impact in this world. And it may not be an impact that everybody gets to hear about, right? Had we not done this podcast, everybody listening may not have known. That's not why we're doing the podcast, just so that everybody knows your story. We're doing the podcast to say, everybody out there, this is something you can do too. It's an impact that you can have. How many people are not benefiting from your efforts if you you are sitting quietly on the sideline looking at the potential to do real estate and then never taking action and doing it. And then here you sit, this incredible example, you and your husband, of doing something scary, taking a leap, doing real estate, benefiting and changing your family's lives, but then impacting so many people along the way. And I just think you're extraordinary. I think you're remarkable, and I honor you for that. And I hope that everybody listening gets to see that and feel that from Andrea as well. And I am so thankful that you came in today to share some time with us and to share your story. And I think that this is going to have a profound impact for those that are watching and listening. So thank you so much.
Well, if it's a small way for me to say thank you for what you guys have done for us, it's a great pleasure.
You're awesome. Steve, any final thoughts?
Nope, just thank you, Andrea.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hey, make sure that if you have not gone and rated and reviewed the podcast, go follow us on the podcast platforms, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and hit that little bell so that when we have new episodes, you can be notified. And then please go give us a review. If you've not given us a review, please do that. And again, Andrea, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you real soon.